I thought I would take this episode to actually summarize everything that's happened in the year 2020 in terms of cartoons, and I found an interesting way to do it. So, for those of you who follow me on LinkedIn, you know that I often post articles or mention things in the news or make my own commentary on where I think the industry is going. So, I reviewed everything that I posted, and it turns out that I actually put 322 posts on LinkedIn in the year 2020, which was kind of crazy for me to realize. So, I thought for today's episode, I would actually go through the highlights of those and then at the end, give you some of my summations and some of my observations of what I think happened in 2020, some of the major trends that we're going to have to deal with or be aware of as we move into the future, and kind of give it to you all in one place. So here we go. January 2020, what a long time ago it seems, but here's the news that happened in that month. So, first of all, that was the time that we heard that Quibi was going to make animation. Shortly after that, we got the news that Netflix was going to do a He-Man series, a remake of the original, with the famous director Kevin Smith. So, at that time, we also got the first trailer of one of my favorite series of the year, Midnight Gospel, on Netflix with Pendleton Ward, the creator of Adventure Time, and Duncan Trussell. And then The Missing Link took the Golden Globes Awards and won Best Animated Feature in the Oscars. So, also during that month, I Lost My Body, one of my favorite films of the year, was nominated but did not win the Oscar, but then went on to win an Annie Award. And then finally, at the end of January, we got news that Aquaman, the DC movie, was going to be made into an animated series from the original director, James Wan. So that's the highlights of January. As we rolled into February, the first thing that came out was that Netflix announced it was going to do its first adult stop motion series. Now, that's a series called The House. Shortly after that, Hulu and DreamWorks made an announcement that they're going to do a slate deal, which means that the franchises Madagascar and Trolls, plus a very, very new franchise, a new property called The Mighty Ones, would be going through Hulu exclusively. Shortly after that, Netflix and Studio Titmouse announced a multi-year overall deal for original adult animation. So that's a first look deal. So that means that anything that Titmouse creates over the next few years that's adult focused has to go to Netflix first. After that, Warner Brothers made a big announcement that they're going to create a streaming focused film division called Warner Max and do something like 8 to 10 mid-budget films every year. And it wasn't clear whether or not they're going to be animated or live action, but there was mention that some of those films were going to be animated, and that opened up a new opportunity for mid-budget animated feature films through Warner Brothers. As the month of March started, it began with Discovery Kids Media announcing that some of their new shows were going to be focused exclusively on the Latin American market. After that, Nickelodeon actually added 3 new executives to its team, which pushed more into the areas of original development. And then, if you guys remember, March was the month where Sonic the Hedgehog was actually released, which was a surprise because it actually made $57 million in its opening weekend and did $146 million for the total US box office. And if you remember, it was actually a big comeback because Sonic had a horrible design that everyone hated. And because of this big uprising in social media about how bad it was, they actually redesigned the whole character, re-released the movie, and what do you know, it did $306 million worldwide and turned out to be kind of a success. So following this, we actually got the first trailer from Sony for the feature film Connected, which hasn't come out yet, but it looked great and we were all pretty excited about that. During the month of March, also a really amazing series called Glitch Text was revealed on Netflix. And actually, I think this was a big moment because this was Nickelodeon's first show produced for another platform. So this is where Nickelodeon kind of made its public transition from being a production studio that only produces for Nickelodeon into a studio that produces for Nickelodeon and for other brands. So also in the month of March, we got this big announcement from Crunchyroll, which was they were going to do 8 original animated series from the giant online platform Webtoons, which I've done another video about. Additionally, in the month of March, we got a big announcement that Moonbug, which is one of the hugest platforms for kids' cartoons, very young kids' cartoons, got a $145 million investment. And if you look at how many views they get on the YouTube platform, it's in the billions. So going from a YouTube platform of billions of views into an SVOD platform, is their transition. And yeah, you guys might know that the preschool series Coco Melon is actually originally a Moonbug YouTube show. All right. Also in the month of March, we got an announcement that Taika Waititi, the fantastic director who did one of my favorite movies, Thor Ragnarok, is going to do not one but two animated series for Netflix based on the Willy Wonka franchise. So that's going to be really exciting. Announced in March, still haven't seen it yet. And then we got a surprise from the network AMC, which we don't normally associate with animation, kind of saying that they're going to do this very cerebral, cool sci-fi concept called Pantheon, also produced by Studio Titmouse. All right, finally, the end of March was kind of a big deal because Disney Channel made this big announcement. It was mostly in the trades that they made 11 executive promotions. That's right, 11 across the fields of development, programming, production, inclusion, and communications, which kind of signaled their commitment not only to the streaming platforms, but also to inclusivity and diversity. So March was quite a big month. All right, April is a big one because, as we all know, April was the first real month that actually things went down into full lockdown. But there's a lot of news that happened that month. So first thing that we got was that Apple actually announced its first animated adult comedy, Central Park, which, as far as I can tell, really hasn't been talked about much since, but that was their first foray into the adult market, actually made by the same production company that does Bob's Burgers. So shortly after that, we got Pixar releasing its first trailer for Soul, which looked pretty exciting. And then we got news on the executive side that an ex-Fox executive, a woman named Vanessa Morrison, who actually was part of the Fantastic Mr. Fox, Ice Age, and the Book of Life, she became the president of Disney's streaming efforts, which was kind of big news. So also like to mention in April that on my birthday, which is April 20th, Midnight Gospel was released on Netflix, which I was super excited about. And then it was really interesting during the month of February because, Cartoon Network and other kids animation brands started actually releasing animated shorts with their characters, teaching kids how to wash their hands. So I remember way back when telling everyone to wash your hands for 20 seconds was a big deal, and I thought it was really great that those kids brands tried to get that message out to the youngest audience to keep the world safe. So in the month of April, we also got Netflix announcing one of its first big animated films, or one of its additional animated films, The Willoughbys. And, right around this time also was the flurry of all these articles, whether it was New York Post or Wall Street Journal or Forbes, starting talking about how animation will be a big force of production during the pandemic because all eyes were looking on us as the medium that could still make entertainment when people had to be isolated. So, okay, but the biggest news, despite of everything I just said in April, was actually the Trolls World Tour. So when that movie came out, it became the largest digital release ever, which ranked up something like 5 million rentals in its first week, which kind of equates to about $95 million in total revenue. But you have to remember that in a typical box office theatrical release, 50% of the revenue actually goes to the theaters that distribute it. So now, as a digital release, that number that goes to DreamWorks is not 50% of the revenue. It's actually more like 75% of the revenue. So that's a big markup if you think about a $95 million release that has 75% going to the people who made it. That's a big difference. And since that moment, streaming digital theatricals was forever changed. The month of May actually started with Hulu announcing that their top animated show, actually their top show in general for all of comedy, was Solar Opposites. So Solar Opposites is created by Justin Roiland, who, as you may know, is the co-creator and voice of Rick on Rick and Morty. So that was pretty exciting. Following that, we got the bad news that Annecy was canceled. Annecy is one of my favorite festivals in the world, but because of Corona, Annecy was the first, I think, big show to really just say it's not safe for us to all gather. And that began the trend of a lot of the other business and consumer festivals in the world of animation just kind of shutting down and going virtually for the year. All right, so after that, Big announcement from Warner Brothers, which was Tom Aschheim, was announced as the president of Global Kids, Young Adults, and Classics for Warner's total portfolio. So that actually means Cartoon Network, Adult Swim, Boomerang, and Warner Brothers Animation, all consolidated under one leader. So a few weeks after that, actually, Michael Ouweleen, who was actually a longtime Adult Swim executive, was promoted to the president of Adult Swim. So, very big, consolidation of the corporate structure there. All right, also in the month of May, Apple actually released one of my favorite films of the year, which is actually Notes for Living on Planet Earth. I really suggest you watch it. It's a beautiful film. It's right in between education, entertainment, and kind of a heartfelt family story, but incredibly high quality, and really became an early signature for what Apple is probably going to do in the months and years to come. So in the month of May, also, the Warner Brothers animated movie Scoob, which was the Scooby theatrical film of the year, went on demand as well. So I think they were hoping to try to get Troll-style digital release numbers, but it landed only at about 25 million in terms of revenue digitally. All right, also in the month of May, HBO Max, with Warner Brothers Animation, released the new Looney Tunes. So the new Looney Tunes is actually, Bugs Bunny, Porky Pig, Daffy Duck, and it was, Daffy Duck. And it's really, really good. I think you should watch it. It's honorific to the original spirit of the cartoons, but it's really new enough, I think, to be accessible to kids. And it's just silly and funny and wacky. All right. Additionally, in that month, which I think was really, really a unique moment in animation's history, is there's this gigantic agency called CAA. They represent a lot of the Hollywood talent that are in the biggest films of the world. They actually announced that they're going to represent their first virtual being. Now, that is a character named Michaela, who only is a 3D animated design, and she's essentially kind of an influencer, but she's so big that literally the character itself now has talent reps. So I think that's a big turning point for the world of cartoons. So the last two things that happened in May, which are really significant, is Sony dropped the first trailer for Wish Dragon, which we still have not seen, and Netflix announced that the #1 series on their entire platform was a 15-year-old cartoon called Avatar: The Last Airbender. All right, the month of June in terms of cartoons was not as big as some of the prior months, but was also, as you remember, really kind of the peak month of the Black Lives Matter movement. So I think a lot of the world of animation kind of took a beat, slowed down a little bit, but there were still some announcements worth mentioning. First of all, Looney Tunes actually became more popular on HBO Max than Game of Thrones itself, which I thought was a really, really kind of big deal about how people are using the platform. Shortly after that, there was a really interesting moment on social media and Twitter where a hashtag, which was stated as animation paid me, kind of went viral and sent shockwaves through the animation industry, especially in the US, which is all these people who work in the animation industry just started uploading their current salaries and what they're making. And it really kind of reoriented people to how much people get paid in the industry. And it became kind of a real eye-opener and hopefully kind of a rebalancing of how the pay structures in the business work. So also in the month of June, Spider-Verse 2 was announced. So everyone was excited to hear that there's going to be another one because the first one was just so freaking good. And then during that time, actually, on a personal note, I actually launched my Black Lives Matter consultation. So instead of using my normal consultation fee, I actually said, you know what, for the short term, I'm just going to say, if you're Black or African American, need help making cartoons, I will just do it for free. And if you're not Black or African American, I will give you my time so long as you give $50 or more to an NPO aligned with BLM. So during that very, very busy month, and actually through the next 3 months, I did about 45 consultations and raised about $3,465. So that was my little contribution to that moment. All right, two other things that happened in June that are worth mentioning. Comedy Central actually announced the first Daria spinoff called Jody. And also Weta, the special effects company you probably know from gigantic feature films like things like Lord of the Rings and Avengers Endgame, announced that they were going to do an animation studio. Okay, July was a pretty big month in terms of animation. It started off with J.G. Quintel, who's the creator of the regular show, actually announcing his first adult series called Close Enough. Right after that, actually, Netflix dropped the first trailer for Over the Moon. And then right after that, Nickelodeon announced a green light of the gigantic YouTube franchise Baby Shark would be on their platform as a TV show. So also in July, Fox made a very, I think, powerful and important announcement that white actors will no longer play non-white actors in their big series Family Guy and Simpsons. So, and then after that, Seth Rogen announced that he's going to be involved as a producer in the first big animated feature of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles since the fully animated one done by Imagi, something like 12, 15 years ago. All right, also in the month of July, Star Trek Lower Decks was announced. So that's the comedy spin-off of the brand, actually produced by Studio Titmouse. And then on a personal note, Cartoon Brew actually did an article about me, which was really exciting. They talked about this YouTube platform, and actually it was one of the big reasons my subscribers actually jumped because they were very kind to me. So I really appreciate that. Thank you, Cartoon Brew. All right, in July also, Apple made another big announcement, which is they stated that they're going to adapt the work of Maurice Sendak. So that's the author who created Where the Wild Things Are. They're going to take all of his library into animation, which also says a lot about where they're going with their brand and picking these gigantic, beloved legacy properties. So in addition, in that month, actually, Hair Love, which was the Oscar award-winning short, actually was announced as an HBO Max fully animated series. And then, after 36 years of being a comic book on the shelf, Usagi Yojimbo, which is a property created by Stan Sakai, was finally announced on Netflix as a new series they're going to call Samurai Rabbit, the Usagi Chronicles. All right. During that time also, Netflix announced another animated movie, this time with Richard Linklater, who's, the famous director of Dazed and Confused, and who also did the rotoscoped feature film with Keanu Reeves called Scanner Darkly. His new feature film project is going to be called Apollo 10.5, A Space Age Adventure. But ironically, at the same time, Netflix actually announced probably its first failure in terms of adult animation, which is Hoops. So it came out that month, but then months later it was a big failure, unfortunately. Then on the flip side, during that same month, they announced that Dragon Prince, their fantastic kids show done by Wonderstorm, is going to be approved until the end. So actually, they're saying this is so good, we're just going to keep going until it's done. All right. Three other big things, at the end of July was Star Trek Prodigy was also announced, which is, Lower Decks is the comedy. Prodigy is going to be the kind of more cool action, more straight sci-fi animated series. And then, DreamWorks announced Wizards, Tales of Arcadia, which is a spinoff from Troll Hunters, is also announced. I mean, I think sometimes it's tough to keep up with all of the big franchise sequels and follow-ups, but I think this was an important one because it really shows the power of how strong Troll Hunters is and how big a machine DreamWorks is in pushing its franchises out further and further into subsequent series, sequels, and spinoffs. And then finally, San Diego Comic-Con went virtual. I was kind of surprised by the month of August in 2020 because normally that's actually a quieter month in terms of the world of cartoons, but just a ton of stuff happened. So actually, beginning with Pixar, they actually announced Luca, which is created by the director of La Luna, the short, which will be an Italy-inspired feature film, will go into production. So right after that, Disney, actually one of their really big executives, Shane Prigmore, was lured away by a big company called Skydance Animation. So I thought that was really important because it shows a little bit of the exodus of, executives into production companies. As much as you may see, executives coming into big streamers, you sometimes see them go the other way and go independent. So I thought that was big news. At this time also, SAG and AFTRA, two of the big union organizations for voice actors, actually reached a 3-year deal with voice actors for TV animation, which is kind of an important moment for those who work in the unionized world of voiceover talent. Also in the month of August, actually, the Ren and Stimpy reboot was greenlit and then promptly canceled. So I think that was an important moment in time because the reason that it was canceled was because of some of the backlash on, it's kind of the Me Too movement coming down on John Kricfalusi, the creator of Ren and Stimpy, who was alleged for some pretty bad behavior during that time. So as much as there were Ren and Stimpy fans who were, really faithful to the original brand, actually when it was announced, there was a lot of backlash, like, please don't do this again. Also, John Kricfalusi's not involved. And then suddenly, wait, hold on, he's done all these reprehensible things that we shouldn't really forgive. So actually the whole show was announced, banned, panned, and then canceled. Crazy moment in time. Right after that, actually, Adult Swim made a big announcement, which is they decided to do their first non-American original with an Australian company, and that is the YOLO series. So also in the month of August, really big shakeup in the kids animation world, which was the Animaniacs Reboot was announced, and that was just gigantic. I mean, everyone's so excited about that brand. Apparently Spielberg himself is still involved in it, and that show was just, I think, going to do very, very well. All right, and then during August, I thought that was funny to mention that during Shark Week, Nickelodeon actually released Baby Shark. So what a brilliant piece of counter-programming. All right, also in the month of August, SpongeBob got its first spin-off announcement, which is the Patrick Star Show. And then I thought, interesting to mention that actually during August, the Japanese anime industry, actually led by Toei Animation, who makes a Pokemon and Dragon Ball, decided to launch a YouTube play. And so the YouTube channel, which is called Analog, actually is a family-friendly YouTube effort. So pretty interesting. All right, during this month, Viacom CBS, which is a company I actually used to work for back in the 90s, actually announced they're going to do an adult animation ramp-up as well. So they hired a guy named Grant Gish to be the SVP of that effort. So a lot of those brands that came from classic MTV, Nickelodeon, I think some other brands like VH1 and other ones they're actually going to do them as adult remakes, but also try to find a way to get into the adult space with their own original brand. And they're, putting executives behind it. All right. During that month, Apple made another big announcement with another big classic franchise, and that is Harriet the Spy. So that has a lot of star power behind it, but they're going to make that into an animated series as well. So also in the month of August, I know there's a lot, and I thought it was worth mentioning. Although it's game-related, there's this big moment where Fortnite actually mocked Apple with this incredible parody of the 1984 classic commercial that Apple did, and Fortnite actually did it in their Fortnite characters because there's a big controversy of how revenue is split and how the creators of Fortnite wanted to do their own purchases, and Apple just pulled them from the store, and the moment they pulled it from the Apple store, Fortnite put that ad up. So I thought that was brilliant and crazy and worth checking out on YouTube. All right, so in addition, in the month of August, Disney announced that actually their first bisexual lead animated character, who is also multicultural, will be a thing for them. So that is the character of Luz and the show The Owl House. All right, during this month also, it's worth noting that the actor Stuart Baker, who was a voice in the Adult Swim show Squidbillies, was fired because of offensive posts on Facebook. All right. Two more final bits of news in the month of August. Blizzard actually announced a full animated version of World of Warcraft in a series they called Afterlife. So now we're seeing Blizzard join, Riot Games, who has their animated series, and also Wizards of the Coast, who's doing Magic the Gathering, which is a project I helped set up with Octopi and the Russo brothers, are moving into literary entertainment. So you're seeing more games make animated series. All right, final announcement for August in 2020 is Apple picked up Wolfwalkers as its first animated movie acquisition, and guess what? It's 2D. September was kind of a big month for me because after working 2 years with the guys at Octopi, I decided to go independent again. So my life personally changed. In September, also, Sam Register, who's actually a long time executive over at Warner Brothers Animation, was announced as the leader of Cartoon Network Studios. So Cartoon Network Studios is really the unification of the two studios of Cartoon Network and Warner Brothers Animation. They've always been separate units historically, so there's always been kind of a friendly rivalry between the two, but now with only one president, hopefully, those two companies will work together a little better and also have their separate projects. So, uh, additionally, in terms of corporate news, actually Fred Seibert, kind of the original creator of the famous Frederator, which actually found shows like Adventure Time and Bravest Warriors, steps down from his namesake company as leader. Um, then on the other side, Nick Animation actually names Ramsey Naito as the president. So a lot of corporate moves. So also in that month, Nickelodeon and Nick India actually announced their first co-pro, which was called The Twisted Timeline of Sammy and Raj. All right, in other kind of small news, I just thought worth mentioning, the U.S. Postal Service released Bugs Bunny stamps, which I got, which were really cool, which kind of just reminds us how much animation fits into mainstream culture. All right, so another bit of news from August was Netflix announced that Zack Snyder, the famous director of Justice League, and Jay Oliva, a great Filipino animation director, have teamed up to do an Army of the Dead prequel and anime series for Netflix. All right, and then in that month, actually, Nickelodeon had some kind of big news, which is they had a show that was called Made by Maddie, but there was a lot of comparison, by people on social media that it was a lot like Hair Love, the HBO Max series and Oscar-winning short. So under that pressure, Nick just folded and pulled the series. All right, during this month, Apple again makes a big statement here to try to differentiate itself from the other players out there by leaning into wellness. And actually, they put out two series, one called Stillwater and the other called Doug Unplugs, which actually tries to help kids with their mental and emotional health. During this month also, Netflix hired a new director for preschool, Kevin Clark. So he's an African-American executive, and one of the things I found really interesting is that he wanted to outwardly state that he wants to fight against black tokenism in kids animation. All right, at the end of this month also, I wanted to also note that Netflix picked up its first Filipino adult-focused feature film, and that was a comedy called Hayop Ka. October was another big month for me because I actually joined Falcon Creative Group during this month, and Falcon is actually an amazing location-based entertainment company that does a lot of the 3D, immersive, and stereoscopic animation that you'll see in theme parks. But in addition, they also build the actual domes and seats and master plan the actual parks themselves. So I'm working with them on adapting a theme park called Kathmandu into an animated series. So also in the month of October, Over the Moon finally hit Netflix, which was a big exciting moment for Asians and Asian Americans, and it was directed by the legendary Glenn Keane. During this month also, Nickelodeon actually hired and upgraded a bunch of executives, really kind of pushing more into their commitment of how serious they are into animation. So they got Conrad Montgomery from Cartoon Network, and they upgraded Claudia Spinelli, Dana Cluveris, and Kelly Gardner into higher, more powerful positions. During this month also, the Obamas, with Chris Nee, the creator of Doc McStuffins, teamed up on an animated preschool show announced as Ada Twist Scientist. In addition, Shannon Tyndall, who's the creator of Kubo and the Two Strings, and Peter Ramsey, who's the director of Spider-Verse, announced that they're going to adapt William Joyce's Ollie's Odyssey for Netflix. Additionally, I thought it was really cool in this month that Warner Brothers Animation ordered a preschool series based on the Batman franchise, and that series is actually based on the Batmobile. So the Batmobile is actually going to be a fun preschool character to be the main character of the show. I just think that's really cool. Also in the middle of this month, one of the biggest comic books for kids, Lumberjanes from Boom Studios, was greenlit for HBO Max, so that was really big news. And also in the world of comic books, the fantastic Robert Kirkman adult superhero series Invincible actually releases their first trailer. Now, what's really cool about Invincible, if you haven't read it, it's an amazing, kind of no-holds-barred superhero story, but for the actual series, it's going to be 1 hour per episode. Also from the world of comics at this time, Marvel actually announced that they're going to do a series based on MODOK, which is like a really crazy, fun villain. I think it stands for Machine Only Designed for Killing, even though that doesn't actually add up to MODOK. But it's going to be a comedy stop-motion show with Patton Oswalt. All right, also during this month, I thought it was notable that Nickelodeon actually got the cover of Variety magazine. And there's this big article talking about how they're changing, how they're updating, and how they're kind of adapting to the times now that a lot of people are leaving the Nickelodeon platform and going to other places, and how Nickelodeon is going to address that. During this month, also, I thought it was notable that Ludacris, the famous rapper, announced a series with Nine Story Media Group to create a new Netflix-inspired show, which is actually based on his daughter, and that one's called Karma's World. And actually, going back to Viacom CBS, which I talked about in one of the prior months, they announced its first animated original, and it was called Gloria Wants to Know It All, and that is going to be a series that's really leaning heavily into Latino content. All right. Probably the biggest news out of Asia for the month of October is that Demon Slayer, the monster anime franchise, opened with a $4 million weekend in the middle of a pandemic. So that was kind of unthinkable that people would still go to the theaters and watch this movie. But that's the power of anime. That's also says a lot about how Japan has been very good about their response to COVID-19. And Demon Slayer just kept on going. So it looks like as of December 20th, this Sunday, as I'm recording, actually I'm recording later, but as of Sunday, they have 301 million in terms of total box office worldwide. And it looks like it's going to take over Spirited Away as the highest grossing film in Japan. All right. In addition to these things, the last two things that happened in October is that Disney released the trailer for Raya and the Last Dragon. That's kind of a big bit of cultural news because it's going to be their first series based in the culture of Southeast Asia. And in another big corporate shift, Warner Brothers, kind of proper, decides to take over HBO Max in terms of family programming. So instead of HBO Max having a separate executive crew, the Warner Brothers team is going to take control of their brand. The biggest news in November of 2020 is that Sony buys Crunchyroll. So in a gigantic $1.1 billion buy, Sony enters the streaming wars by getting this gigantic platform and leaning into anime as its way to fight all the other guys out there trying to do animation. So that was kind of big news. In addition, this was the month that Webtoons announced that it's going to make Webtoon Studio. So I have a whole nother video about that. But actually, it was a really big moment to say that this forward-thinking publisher is moving into animation, and they're leaning in with massive Hollywood partnerships, a very smart approach, and I'm very curious to see what they're going to do. So additionally, in November, there was a big corporate move, which is Jermaine Turner, which is he's a friend of mine, and he's an 18-year Disney vet, leaves Disney and joins Netflix in the adult animated division. So that's was really big news because he really was almost like a lifer over there, and that shows the power of Netflix to pull a gigantic executive from Disney. Also during this month, actually, Tom and Jerry's Reboot actually launched, which I thought was significant. It's very high quality, and we'll see how that does on the HBO Max platform. And then, kind of out of nowhere, Amazon made a big announcement. They've been kind of quiet for most of 2020, but they announced a series called Oaklandia with Snoop Dogg, Vince Vaughn, Daniel Dominguez, and Chris Powell. So they finally made some noise this year. Towards the end of the month, one other big executive shift was Amy Friedman was announced as head of kids and family programming at Warner Brothers. And again, more corporate shifts, more alignment. Warner Brothers had a lot of activity in 2020, and Amy Friedman's announcement was the big one in November. Okay, here we are in December. It's the end of the year, and there's still a lot of things happening in the world of cartoons. First of all, Aardman Animation, the classic stop-motion company that made Wallace and Gromit and Chicken Run, announced a partnership with Namco, actually the video game company, to create new transmedia IPs. So I think that's a really unusual and unique partnership, but very interesting. So I'm interested to see what they make that will be both great games and great animation. So during this month, also Cartoon Network and Black Women Animate, which is a production company, launched the first Black in Animation Award Show, which I think was really cool. Also in December, Wizards of the Coast, which is the company that makes Dungeons & Dragons and Magic the Gathering, they're actually part of Hasbro, launches a new kid studio. So that kid studio's focus is to create role-playing games that also work as animated series. and they got Leah Hoyer as the VP of creative and the creative director. Now, she comes from the game development space, but we'll see how they kind of make new shows that bring the best of Magic and D&D into the world of cartoons. Also during this month, actually, Netflix announced and released its first interactive show, which was called We Lost Our Human, which is, really unique because now kids can watch and change the ending in kind of choose your own adventure style format. So also in this month, David Levine, who's a big power executive, moved over to Moonbug. So I talked about Moonbug in one of the earlier months. Now they've got a real player on the field, and we'll see what happens with that. And then in December, Marvel announced they're going to do an animated series based on What If. So I was so excited about that because I'm a big What If reader from the 80s. So you're going to see, people like Doctor Strange, and you're going to see people like Chadwick Boseman actually reprising his role, not as Black Panther, but in the What If series as one of the Guardians of the Galaxy. So pretty exciting. During this month, also, Pixar announced they're going to do a feature film from the creator of Bao, and it's going to be called Turning Red. So towards the end, a couple other big announcements happened. So Shauna Spenley, a former Netflix executive, actually joined Riot Games as the global president of entertainment. So Riot is the guys who make League of Legends. Having a real entertainment-focused executive means that they're very seriously leaning into making more linear series, and we're going to see what kind of animation they do. They've got that Arcane series that is completed but is not announced yet, so I don't know if Shauna will be involved with that, but definitely for the future, there's going to be more coming out of Riot. And then towards the end, the last bit of news in December was that Sidney Clifton was announced as the SVP over at Henson. So now Henson Entertainment, the guys who do Dark Crystal and Muppets, have a new power player in the field to help make, hopefully, some animated shows. Okay, so if you've made it through that entire video, thank you very much. That was a breakdown of month by month, everything that I thought was important in the business of cartoons as summarized from my LinkedIn feed, which, as I mentioned at the beginning, had 322 posts this year, all talking about the business of cartoons exclusively. Now, I know that, about 10-15% of that was personal promotion or something that happened in my life, but that still leaves about 300 or so kind of articles and mentions and discussions about the industry itself. So, I think that after I said all that again and read it all again and went through it, I do have 6 takeaways from this year that I think are important trends and things to know about what happened in the business of cartoons and where we're going in the future. So, number 1, diversity is here to stay, and I'm very happy about that. I think this year more than ever, I saw many more POCs getting executive positions, producer positions, creative positions, writer positions, director positions, voiceover positions. And I'm just really happy that we're moving forward in that direction and that more of the people behind the scenes as well as the characters on screen are going to be more diverse. And that's just got to be better for everyone. So the second takeaway is if you look at all the executive changes and all the shuffles and all the things that move around, it's just a good, healthy reminder that the industry is always moving. It's always changing form. It's always changing shape. And I think that's just our responsibility to stay on top of and make sure that we understand how companies realign themselves and rehire and upgrade and downgrade and change around every month. So that's kind of enlightening. Thirdly, I think the 2 most important, not talked about enough companies in the animation space right now are Webtoons and Moonbug. So everyone talks about the streamers. I talk about the streamers. I think about them a lot. Talk with them a lot, but I think what Webtoons and Moonbug are doing are really, tectonic shifts in the way that content is brought to fans and viewers and how it's made and distributed and the kinds of places where audiences are found. So, the third takeaway, which is kind of a 2-parter, is I think Apple is finally starting to peel away a little bit from the other brands and defining itself as something very specific. So, unlike HBO Max or Netflix or even Amazon, who kind of cover a lot of different attempts and spend a lot of money on a lot of different teams. I think Apple is really trying to do a lot more specific focus on, kind of what is good for kids, what is like healthy for audiences, what is a positive takeaway, and hence all these, kind of legacy properties with positive messages behind them. So that's a real interesting specific brand, which might be different than like Adult Swim or Netflix, which will try something just for the raw creativity, even if it's shocking or cartoony or crazy or controversial, you know. So the second part of that, part four, is I think Warner Brothers and Warner Media is really consolidating. So it's taken almost a year of announcements for them to really move, shake, and kind of align things, whether it's their executive team or how their different parties work together. The whole Warner Media family, I think, has consolidated and shifted in 2020 and 2021. Could be a much more signature aligned brand with a more set of executives who aren't from different parts of the company working against each other, but all under kind of one aligned structure. The fifth thing is you always got to talk about Netflix because they're so big, they're so pervasive, is that they're just spending. So they're continue, I think, to do everything from preschool to young kids to teenage to adult in the animated space. They'll do documentary, they'll do fiction. They're just going to try a lot of stuff. They're going to do 6 animated movies a year. They're just going to keep spending. And I think we will see a lot of hits and a few misses from that, fast and expensive approach. And then the last thing I will say is that, especially with the end of the year purchase of Crunchyroll by Sony and having all that move all under the Funimation umbrella, and then with the massive success of Demon Slayer as a 2D feature film that did more money than Miyazaki's Spirited Away. Just a big reminder to never ever underestimate anime, just how big it is, just how pervasive it is, just how so much of consumers today are saturated with it. It is not niche, it is gigantic. It's going to get bigger, it's going to get different. And whether that's Castlevania or whether that's a show that's produced in the West that feels like anime, or if it's kind of like your true anime, which is produced and made in Japan, it's just never going away. And so don't ever think it's going to be anything small. Okay, that is it. That is 2020. Thank you everyone who has continued to watch Surviving Animation, who's engaged with me in the comments. I do the best I can to answer everybody. I will continue to do this channel, continue to try to bring people information about the business of cartoons, and I wish everyone a happy holiday, and I hope you stay safe. I hope you're not socially mixing with each other and you're staying apart, and I hope very much to see everyone in 2021.